I think the key thing is with anything like money, it's not fundamentally good or bad. It's about your relationship with it. The relationship is defined by how you use it and whether you're attached to it.
I really like what you said about intuition. And to me, I always say, like, sometimes it comes as a gentle inner voice, but sometimes, like, I get a slap on my face and I literally have to, like, okay, this is not going to work. And I'm
One of my friends says, you know, if you don't see the sign, don't worry, it'll get bigger until sometimes it hits you over the head. And that's exactly my experience. I did sell a startup to the 5th biggest business software company in the world. I did make some money on that. Like, you know, to be very honest, most of the entrepreneurs that I know that do that are still playing that game. They're still focused on how they can accumulate more.
Hi, Scott.
Hey, Cleona. It's good to see you.
Good to see you again, too. I'm really excited today to share my conversation with you today on my little YouTube channel, Conscious Money. I'm excited because when I saw you being interviewed with Angelo DeLulo, you brought together business and spirituality and consciousness and awakening and intuition. And that's not a combination that I hear frequently in the business world. And you're very successful in the material sense. You created a startup, Troops, which was acquired by Salesforce. But you've also massively shifted into a different kind of success, and I'm interested in that. So I'll start with my first question, which is, could you share a little bit about your awakening journey?
Yeah, definitely. I would say there's kind of a couple of inflection points. The first one of those happened when I was 24 years old. I woke up one day with a bald spot on my beard the size of a quarter. And I learned that I had developed alopecia because I was so stressed out from work. And I was working at a startup at the time. Truthfully, I didn't really have any reason to be overly stressed, but in my kind of ambition, trying to be perfect, trying to control the world, I had driven myself to that. And one of the methodologies to deal with that my doctor recommended was meditation. This was in 2012. There wasn't a lot of people meditating. It wasn't a popular thing where people are like, oh, I should have a meditation practice. At that point, it was quite esoteric and obscure to be meditating as a 24-year-old living in New York City. But nonetheless, I tried it and it seemed to help my stress. And I learned in the coming years that meditation was kind of just a non-negotiable for me. It was something I needed to do every single day, not to be a crazy stressed person, because I would kind of go through these periods of meditating for a month or two, cooling my anxiety, feeling good, being like, okay, I have 20 minutes of my morning back, and then relapsing into stress. And so that happened enough times over, I would say a period of 5 or 6 years where I just knew that I needed to do it. It was like brushing my teeth. I just need to do it every day. And I think, that was kind of like an entree. It was like meditation wasn't viewed as like some mechanism to become enlightened or grow spiritually. Like it was very squarely like, I don't want to be stressed. But what I didn't realize during that experience was that prolonged practice really helped me develop the ability to still the mind and maintain long periods of concentration, which would later kind of serve me when I reoriented spiritually. I would say the next big inflection point came after I tried plant medicine. I was someone that, never did drugs. Like I drank, I had coffee. I guess those would be considered things that alter your state. But I never really, smoked pot or like did lots of those things. And I always kind of considered that stuff to be something I was uninterested in. There was this thing I kept hearing about though in 2000. I guess I started hearing about it 2017 called ayahuasca. And what was intriguing about it was many of the people that I knew that had done it were all entrepreneurs. They were all kind of people that were successful, people that had their life together. And they spoke about its capacity to really shift someone's perspective in a way that lasted. And that to me was unique relative to, the other substances that people put into their bodies that our society labels as drugs. And so I had kind of recognized probably 4 years into my startup that I was pretty unhappy. I had just gotten out of a long relationship. I felt like I was just slogging away for years and kind of just was coming to grips with like, despite the fact that on the outside my life looked very enviable, I was pretty miserable. And a friend of mine had reached out to me saying, hey, I organized this ayahuasca retreat outside of New York City where I was living at the time, flying this person in. Do you want to do it? And I decided to say, screw it. What do I have to lose? And, that was really my first, I would say, transcendent experience where I experienced an altered state of consciousness. I think that experience was the first time that I encountered a presence in my awareness that was different than my thoughts. It was like I was having a conversation with a loving presence that seemed to know everything. I could ask any question. It would give me these crazy answers in using language that was not typically what I would use. It was always loving and positive. And I now know this to be what I would call the true self. But at the time I was like, whoa, I just met God. I think I kind of thought coming out of that experience, like many people do, like, whoa, like everything has changed. Like this is like, life is going to be different from now on. Like I'm going to be so happy and feel good all the time. And I would say there was definitely kind of like a halo period, but a month later I found myself, despite the journaling, despite the meditating, despite all the quote unquote integration work, just relapsing into my old ways, right? Being annoyed, being impatient, being constantly obsessed with being more productive, listening to a podcast, doing all of the optimizations. And, my answer to that kind of return to normalcy was to go do ayahuasca again. And so 3 months later, I had another friend who was organizing another ceremony in Austin, Texas. And I went, and I would say that was really kind of the big shift, because what happened during that experience was I had a huge energetic opening. And what that feels like for people that might not be familiar with it, because I know that I wasn't really kind of in touch with this stuff, is it just felt like this surge of pressure moving through my body, and it lasted about 6 hours. And I thought it was essentially kind of just a reaction to the ayahuasca. That was what someone had told me. But the interesting thing was, in the coming days and weeks, every time I quieted my mind, my body began to shake with that energy. And, it still does that today. Not every time I quiet my mind, but what I learned is that there was this process called a Kundalini awakening, where there's this idea of this dormant energy in all of humans that's responsible for effectively creating our bodies and beings in the womb. And then it goes dormant. And for most people, for most of their lives, and for me, for some reason, it decided to kind of reawaken. And I had no idea what this was. I thought I might have epilepsy. I thought I might have Parkinson's. I was like, what is going on with me? Saw all the Western medical doctors, had 36-hour brain study done on me. No one could give me any answers on what this was. And this process of really trying to figure out what was happening to me, and there were many other weird symptoms, basically led me on the spiritual path. And, looking back, and you hear this with many people that go on this path, it wasn't a conscious choice. I was an entrepreneur who was like just trying to feel okay and get insights on my business and use meditation and yoga for like very kind of not spiritual reasons. And it was almost as if this process was like some higher intelligence and force saying, okay, you don't have a choice. Your body's going to go through this. And the only way out of it is to become adept in spirituality and all of these different things that one must go through to make it through this experience. And so that was really kind of how I ended up here. And it's been one hell of a ride. It's been very challenging, but also the most enriching and rewarding experience of my life. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Wow, that's quite something.
It is.
So transitioning I have so many follow-up questions to that, but I'm going to keep the questions about money. What is money to you now? Like if you were to define money?
Yeah, I think so. From the kind of metaphysical, esoteric perspective, everything we see is energy. Like this desk is comprised of energy. Our emotions are energy. Our thoughts are energy. My house is energy. Like the most fundamental substrate of matter is tiny vibrating particles that are energies. And this has been said in the spiritual teachings for a long time. And quantum physics is now, proving all of this. And that's kind of what I think about when I think of money. I think of it as just energy. And when we exchange money, we're exchanging energy. And so, for me, it's a resource to be used to support that which I seek to become and seek to create in the world. And, I appreciate that. Like it is a practical part of our reality. And, I think our relationship with it is something that definitely becomes evolved as we work as we kind of get into the spiritual side of things. And I'm happy to talk about that.
Yeah. How has your own personal relationship with money changed since awakening? Because I imagine before you were like this contracted ball of alopecia, creating stress, driving things yourself and being productive, efficient. This is what I imagine. I obviously don't know, but you look very relaxed. You look peaceful. You're smiling. Like has lots changed?
Yeah, I think, there's a tendency where for people when I kind of where I was at to have this idea of like, when I get this thing outside myself, I will feel how I want to feel. And so it could be when I sell my startup, I'm going to feel how I want to feel. When I have the perfect partner, I feel how I want to feel. When I have, XYZ money in my bank or a second house or whatever it is. And it just turns out that a lot of those external things are basically things that money is associated with. I mean, even if you talk about relationships, there was this idea that like, well, if I'm really successful, like I'm going to be able to get an amazing partner. And that drives a lot of men to do what they do. Right. And, so I think there was a high level idea that something outside myself was going to make me happy and that money was a part of that equation. And I think the big shift and change for me was that there's actually nothing outside of me that is going to give me the lasting peace, joy, love, abundance, creativity that I seek. That is actually an entirely inside job. And there's countless examples of that, right? Like think about all the incredibly successful, incredibly rich people who are miserable, and then all the people that have nothing that are super fulfilled and happy. There's examples of this everywhere. And so I think as I started to come to embody that realization and recognition, money just no longer held the allure that it once did. It just no longer was a strong motivator. And like some examples of that showing up is like, my background is a startup entrepreneur. I used to get excited about ideas that could make me a lot of money. Like I used to be like, oh, cool. Here's an opportunity. Here's an advantage. That just isn't enough for me anymore. Like, it's just not interesting. When I'm in conversations about talking about money, it's like, this is just so uninteresting. And so, your view of money shifts from this like highly, at least for me, highly sought after thing to be something that has practical purpose and, is helpful, but it's not the answer. And that creates an immense amount of freedom, right? Because even things like, oh, what should my next vocation be or my next career be? There was always this conditionality around that where like, well, it has to be this huge opportunity or it has to be this big thing or I have to be able to make a lot of money. And like, that conditionality for me is just it's not really present anymore. And the other very fascinating thing, which kind of relates to this, is I also before did not have a deep sense of trust in the highest force, the highest power, God, source, universe, whatever you want to call it, in basically supporting me unconditionally. And so there was this idea that I really, really had to, like, me, which was very much like my ego, had to go out and make things happen to make money. And where I feel now is that I feel very supported by that higher intelligence, that universal force to supply me with what I need, when I need it, as I need it, to accomplish what I set out here to do as a soul that is incarnated here on earth. And so there just really isn't a whole lot of pressure for me. And look, I'll also call the elephant in the room out. Like, I did sell a startup to the 5th biggest business software company in the world. I did make some money on that. Like, I've been afforded the privilege of some financial freedom that many people don't have, and that's not lost on me. But, to be very honest, most of the entrepreneurs that I know that do that are still playing that game. They're still focused on how they can accumulate more. And they're not out of that scarcity mentality. And Yeah, it's just been a profound gift that has allowed me much more freedom to authentically pursue that which the deepest part of myself desires. And I'm so grateful for it.
Yes, what you say sounds so good, and it reminds me of an Irish teacher called Jack O'Keefe, and she says, this moment is as good as it gets. But I notice, since I'm not, fully awakened, is my mind is constantly manufacturing better scenarios. Like, this could be better if, that could be better if, I could be warmer, or I could be in a better, And part of my job, because I help people to plan their retirement, it's always a reminder to just enjoy now, because sometimes we kind of plan for that moment in the future, and we're missing now, and it feels like such a waste if we're stressed now trying to create that magic perfect number, which won't even give us the happiness that we're seeking.
Yeah, I mean 100%. Many teachers talk about this. I was just listening to Eckhart Tolle today in my car, and it's the eternal now, right? Like, this is all that we have. There are no guarantees that we'll wake up tomorrow. And hopefully everybody does that's listening to this, right? But this is the experience. This is the dance, this moment. And, I know exactly what you're talking about with the tendency of the mind to focus on its effectively deficits of the now. And that is part of our hardwiring. It's part of our ego construct. And to me, it's why what you just described is there was this thing I wrote once. It was all about I want to make enough money so that I could do whatever I want. Right? That was the idea. And what occurred to me on the spiritual path at a certain point was what's funny? I can't even lay on my couch and not do something productive and be okay with myself. And I don't even have to worry about money. Like that notion of being able to do what you want doesn't maybe you can have more experiences or whatever, but it doesn't solve that more fundamental, money doesn't solve that more fundamental predicament of the human experience of the constant racing thoughts and voice in your head bossing you around and telling you what to do. And that's the real problem. And that's the real problem.
Good enough. You're not safe. You're not this.
Yeah, exactly. You're not safe. You're not enough. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. Why are you doing this? What's don't eat that. Don't eat. It's geez, give it a rest. And so I'm all for people go out and make the money, do that. But you just see the archetype time and time again, where many people, they go and do that and they go, wait, this isn't going to make me feel I want to feel. I thought it was, and it doesn't. And that's what leads people. That's what often leads people to this, path that's been called many names. It's been called the second mountain. It's been called, whatever it is, whatever the spiritual path, but it's often the experience of, getting those things that we thought were going to make us feel how we want to feel, and then not feeling that way, that kind of leads us here.
Yeah. And I also want to say money is helpful, to get our basic needs met. You're definitely more comfortable in this world because we don't have communities when we're spiritual beings or spiritual people like Ramana Maharshi, or we don't have those same communities and infrastructure as we used to. And so it is helpful to get our basic needs met. I have a little question. about success. Like you've had traditional success, academics and the startup. Could the definition of success, like, do you even think about success anymore?
Yeah, I think success it definitely has changed. The way that I think about it is, the word that's coming up for me right now is like alignment. Like my perception of reality in this experience is that I came here to evolve, which in my context is to learn, to expand my consciousness, to more deeply realize the truth about who I am and what this is, and contribute. And I believe that all of us are like we all have like an essence, right? You maybe heard of like kind of like your unique genius or unique ability, or like the things that you just kind of love, like have always loved to do. And maybe you like love to do them when you were a kid. And then all this conditioning and programming kind of veered you away from them. And what happens is like, as we remove those, all that layering of in our subconscious of repressed emotions and these ideas and different things, it's like we kind of return to that a more original, authentic essence of who we are and why we came here. And it can even feel like a remembrance. And when that occurs, the like what success feels like to me is like to be in align with that, to be living that. And so this phrase that comes to mind is like success used to be about like it evolves from like what you have to what you do to who you become. And for me, that's kind of really, that last one is really what resonates, is like, am I authentically embodying the deepest part of myself in every single moment? And, more broadly with kind of how I'm choosing to spend this time.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Success is alignment. What would a healthy relationship with money look like to you?
Yeah, I think so. I have like really, I've like really spent a lot of time with this because, you in our conditioning, right? There's so much, so many ideas that are unhelpful, right? Like I grew up in a Christian household, and, there was like all this stuff in the Bible about like, if you have a lot of money, you're not going to go to heaven. Like, just like, you just kind of either you get these kind of diluted ideas from people teaching the material or even the material itself around money. And it creates lots of polarities and, different ideas like you can't be incredibly rich and be enlightened being, or, there's all kinds of different things. I think the key thing is with anything like money, it's not fundamentally good or bad. It's about your relationship with it. And the relationship is defined by how you use it and whether you're attached to it. And so like, for me, a healthy relationship is like, yeah, like money's going to come and go. I want to use it in productive ways that are in alignment with the greatest good of all beings, including the greatest good for my family, including the greatest good for the world, and including the greatest good for my own emotional and mental well-being. But as it comes and as it goes, I'm going to be open to how it wants to flow, and I'm not going to be tormented by loss and gain, because that's a source of suffering. And so, to me, that's kind of what it's all about, is like learning how to like become unattached to it. And then learning how to put it to good use. And look, I'm not a renunciate. Like, I like nice things. I like material comforts, but I also know that material comforts aren't what's truly going to make me happy. And so they're just, they're there to be enjoyed. I don't think enjoying those things there's anything wrong with it, but I also know that that's not kind of the source of what is really going to make my life a great life.
Yeah. That's beautiful. The greatest good, because I see sometimes people sharing, I saved some money by renting in, I don't know, New Jersey and living in New York City and then flying the whole way and, like flying in and out. And I just think, okay, but you're not considering what's good for the planet or, and maybe that's my projection, but it's like this whole idea of money being only utilitarian. I really like the greatest good, and, as wide as your lens is at any given moment. I'm not implying any judgment, because I still probably make harmful choices. So I'm not implying judgment, but just the way that we, sort of congratulate each other for saving a few pounds or dollars. It's sometimes it frustrates me.
Yeah, I think, it comes back to identification, which is like, what do you identify as? Like, do you identify as like a scared ego that doesn't have enough, that like, man, I really need that extra $200 every time I fly or whatever. Or do you identify as like an eternal infinite being that's here on an experience and has the infinite abundance and creativity of the creator of all things, like supporting you? Like, if those are just two very different identities. And, I find that, like it just impacts, it just cascades to like all of your choices and what you think is important and, all that kind of stuff. I also think it's quite helpful in explaining why sometimes things don't happen, right? Like, it's like, maybe you made an investment that went sideways and you're like, well, what happened there? Maybe there's some source of benevolence that expand is just beyond you, right? It's not just about you and having your preferences met. And so whether it's, an opportunity for your own growth, whether it's maybe helping kind of the collective in a way that you find difficult to perceive, those are, I think, really helpful too, as you kind of move in this direction.
Yeah. And I think one myth I had about awakening is that everything then goes in your, like you're always happy.
Goes in your way.
Always go your way. And you feel good all the time, but it's not true. Like Ramana Maharshi, I think Nisargadatta had lung cancer. He smokes a lot. And you still face circumstances, but you're just facing them from a different place.
I think that's right. I think the word enlightenment implies, by the way, I don't consider myself enlightened. But like that word, it implies some type of destination. And what I believe is like, we're evolving and growing and expanding to infinity. Like that's kind of what we do. And there is no finish line. And so like, when you talk to, you read enlightened masters, it's like the word enlightenment has many different connotations and different traditions of like what it means, but like that's not it, right? Like you continue to evolve and grow, and in order for there to be evolution, there needs to be some type of stress. Like there needs to be something, some event that causes growth, which usually means that it's not easy. And so, yeah, I think like you're 100% spot on that like, it's not like all your problems go away, but it is like you're more skillfully able to kind of encounter those experiences that we might consider inconvenient and gracefully move through them and find meaning in them. And, you know, that's a tremendous gift in itself.
Yeah. So Scott, I have about 6 questions left and we have 20 minutes. I'm going to fly through.
Let's fly through.
If someone wanted to manifest more money, more love, a healthier life, what's the clearest way to manifest? Do you have a couple of pointers?
I think manifestation is, the Tibetan Buddhists believe that everything we see is a manifestation of our consciousness. The problem is that we can't see like 90 to 95% of the material in our subconscious. Like it's like all of our beliefs, our traumas, our wounds, all of that stuff. And so, you know, what my experience has been is as I've done that requisite work of like figuring out like what are those imprinted energy and information in my consciousness and cleaned a lot of that up, there's been a greater coherence of what I like want to happen and it happening in reality. It's like there's just so much synchronicity. And to me, that's kind of what's really going on. And so you have a lot of manifesting teachers and people talk about like, do this technique, but they don't really ever they don't really ever share that there's like so much garbage material that's in conflict with that someone's carrying around that it's impossible for them to manifest what they want. And so my experience, I think what everybody really wants with manifestation is they want to be a consistent manifester. They want to be an alchemist. They want to think of something and it appear, right? And so like the way that you become that is you purify yourself. And, you know, the manifestation is just an inevitable byproduct at that point. So that would be my recommendation is like, you know, work at the root, work at like, create the conditions and foundation to be an easy manifester versus like a very specific technique, that, you know, someone on the internet says.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like the inside creates the outside. And
yes.
That we have, and if it's unconscious, then you can't know it and see it. You can only see the byproducts of your reactions. But that's a good place to start. It's why am I reacting in this way? It's
a great place to start. And I think it's like, you may be like, well, why this sucks? Why am I manifesting stuff that I don't want or whatever? And it's like, well, the whole reason of that is so that you can see it and you can grow. Like that is the game. Like you're being shown these things so that you can acknowledge them and transmute them and change them and transform them to, you know, reach these kind of different levels of experience. And so, you know, it just means that there's work to do, which is okay.
Yeah. There's a default narrative about lack, not enough money, not enough time. What advice would you give to people to shift to like a more expansive narrative?
Yeah. So I think, my belief is like with these type of, beliefs, which are, I call like imprints. They're like packets of information and energy stored in our consciousness. A lot of people just try to like layer stuff on top, right? They like write out affirmations and they listen to stuff, but like, to me, that's not as effective as facing what's there first. As like, okay, I have doubt about money, or I'm afraid I'm not enough, or I have scarcity. Instead of layering on top of that, it's like, no, I'm going to sit with that. I'm going to acknowledge and recognize the doubt is there. And then after I really kind of drop into my body, feel the experience of the energy, be with it, eventually I'll maybe start to feel spacious. That kind of takes me off to this thing. This is moved. Then I will install like that quality that is more aligned with the true nature of who you are, which is this amazing, infinite, loving, abundant being. And so, and that new replacement often happens automatically at a certain point. And so yeah, I think like, you know, instead of adding, it's actually like an unlayering of what's there. And then that helps you kind of change the composition at a more fundamental level. And so the big to do there is to just note, it's like, you want to work on your doubt, like notice when you're doubting and be with it. You want to work on your scarcity, notice when you're feeling scarcity and be with it. And it's just like,
yeah,
these are all presenting opportunities that you can work with.
And at the heart of it, they're just unpleasant sensations. Just unpleasant sensations in the
exactly.
body.
It's not, it's not who you are. Yeah. You are not, it's not who you are. It's like you are this like luminous being. And then you've had all of these stamps just put on you throughout life that you didn't even choose. You know, by the TV you watch, by things your parents said, by people things did you. And then it's like, you think that you're the stamps. It's like, you're not the stamps, you're beneath all that. And so like, you just gotta just remove those layers. Yeah. And, you know, your more fundamental nature will reveal itself.
Yes. I love that. Talking about a slightly heavier question, our current money system, although it appears that we have, you know, significant advancements in healthcare, vaccinations, technology, but there are still lots of problems like overconsumption, climate emergency, and lots of income inequality. You know, there is not a shortage of wealth. It's just that we aren't very creative with how we distribute it. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on why, like, do you think change if our consciousness shifts?
I think the money system it's all really just a reflection of the collective consciousness. It's like, if you have a bunch of people that feel like they don't have enough, that they're unsafe, right? That like they're contracted, like everything that emanates from that is going to be a reflection of that. And so like, to me, this is like why I'm passionate about helping people work on the consciousness level, because the collective systems, institutions, things we create are just emanations of that. And so, and the collective is an emanation of each individual. And so I mean, I think like our system and all of its problems are a reflection of the state of the consciousness of humanity, of who we think we are. Because if everyone thought that they were infinite, abundant, safe, eternal beings, like if they didn't believe death was real and they didn't believe, like, there wouldn't be all these hoardings. There wouldn't be all of this accumulation. There wouldn't be all of this inequality. Like, everything that we're dealing with implies this immense sense of kind of separation and scarcity and I'm not enough. And so I think the consciousness works at the root level. You know, like things like the Bitcoin and the fiat currency, like, I don't know. I personally don't really get into the details. Like, I kind of just, the way that I kind of approach my own life is like, you work on the consciousness and I'll let the creative intelligence of the highest power figure out the details. They know the details better than I know the details. And so, yeah. And I think what we're seeing right now, because I do think more people are kind of becoming aware of this, and the wool is being pulled over our eyes of a lot of these, off our eyes on a lot of these institutions, is like, what we've been doing isn't working, and people realize it. And these institutions are fighting to maintain that kind of extractive monopoly. And again, we can come back to the idea that if these people were, if these institutions felt safe, if they felt enough, if they felt all of these things, they wouldn't be behaving this way. And so I think we're just going to kind of slowly see the dismantling of a lot of this. And, also slowly see a lot of people that no longer resonate with that opt out. People aren't going to live in these, people aren't, it's like me and my fiance, we're like, I don't know if the US is our place anymore. It's like, a lot of the things that are done here, they don't resonate like they once did. I see the bigger picture of what's going on. It's like, I don't know if this is what I want to opt into. And that doesn't mean I don't have appreciation and reverence for it, but I can also not choose that. Like those are kind of separate, discrete things. So yeah, it's a very interesting time to watch all this unfold.
Yes, indeed. You also taught a course on intuition, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about intuition and how you use it with your business decisions. And then tying into that, you shared something about money and business decisions that maybe are slightly non-traditional. And I was really curious about those.
Yeah. So intuition is this kind of this thing that many, many very successful people talk about. We might even kind of have some experiences ourselves, but we don't really know how to get more of it. Like we don't actively seek it out. And it's a form of intelligence that's different from the intellect, right? It's like we form our intellect by accumulating information through experiences, through reading things, podcasts like this, whatever. Mm-hmm. But then there's these instances where we just have this inner knowing, and it usually steers us in the right direction. And what I learned, or what happened to me, is that kind of voice that I mentioned during the Ayahuasca experience. As I went deeper on this path, that became more dominant in my awareness, and I became able to access it on demand, like I was on a psychedelic. And so my opinion, there's different types of intuition. There's like intuition that comes from like years and years of experience, but then there's like non-local intuition in the super consciousness that you hear all the yogis talk about. That's really just a direct connection to your soul and to, information from the collective consciousness. And, so like for me, like that isn't bound by space or time, that like knows everything, like, that people might've experienced in these kind of peak experiences. So like for me, all of this, what happens is when you do all this unlayering, that emerges. It becomes a bigger contributor to your awareness. And you start to have increasing union with it. And so like, for me, like I just know the limitations of my intellect and what it's good for. And I've, over the years, just started to trust this kind of inner voice that has a difference in texture than thoughts, different temperament. You really start to recognize it when you begin to work with it. And at this point, at any material decision about my life, I ask. Like I quiet my mind and I ask, and the information comes through clearly. And so like, it's like when I'm, doing investments, like maybe I'll take do some angel investing in tech companies. Like I'll take a cursory glance at the deck, but the decision is being made by what the information I get in my intuition. When I hire people, I'm using my intuition. When I decide, should I go to this? Should I not go to this? I'm using my intuition. I am tuning into that higher self, and I am following and heeding its guidance. And the paradox, the thing that's interesting about this is like, what does every great tradition talk about? It's like, basically like surrender the personal will to the divine will, and like all things will be added unto thee. This is what that's talking about. This is like the practical submission to that higher intelligence when it comes there is actually what that is referencing. And there's other components too, but so like, to me, it's just like a no brainer. Like, I'm not going to like use my programmed mind by like the crap on the news and on the internet and by like many, unsavory influences. Like, I'm going to go to the source. And, the more that I lean into that in my life, like the better it gets. And conversely, the times that I go against it, like usually things don't turn out as good. So, it's been a practice I've had for nearly 3 years, and it just kind of completely changes the game. And
are you going to continue teaching your courses on intuition?
I think so. Yeah. Like, I think it's such a valuable skill. And what I've learned is like, we have many inner technologies as humans that are either unrecognized or unnurtured. And this is one of them. And so, I think that there's more people out there that need to like show the practicalities of how to work with this, and also do so in a way that kind of guides people gently over a period of time, because that's important. And so, I don't know when I'm going to do the next one, but like, I'm definitely going to do it. People really liked it, seemed to get a lot out of it. And I had fun doing it too.
Yeah. And shout out to Scott's Substack, which is very good, a really good newsletter about consciousness. And I enjoyed watching the video of you with the Kundalini surging through your body.
It's intense.
Quite something. Yeah. I really like what you said about intuition. And to me, I always say like sometimes it comes as a gentle inner voice, but sometimes like I get a slap on my face and I literally have to like, okay, this is not going to work. Change direction, change direction. Like it literally gets blocked. And
one of my friends says, if you don't see the sign, don't worry, it'll get bigger until sometimes it hits you over the head. And that's exactly my experience.
Try to take the subtle hints.
Absolutely.
So, any favorite books on money or life that you recommend reading?
Yeah, on money specifically, I really like the book, The Psychology of Money.
Morgan Housel.
Yeah, I think it just kind of gets to the crux of like a lot of money issues, which is like, keep your burn low, live inside your means, and realize that it's probably actually not money itself that you're chasing, but things like freedom and things that you think that you associate with money, but might not actually be directly money. So really like that book. I think in terms of life, one of my favorites is The Surrender Experiment. It's a pretty just like enchanting story about a yogi businessman who kind of just decided to like not try to control everything and see what happens. And he ended up having an incredible life. And I think there's a lot of deep truth in that book. And also it's a fun read. So that would be a good one I'd recommend as well.
Fantastic. Any parting thoughts? And could you share, Scott, how people can reach you?
Yeah. We'll start with how people can reach me, just because it's a, basic question.
Yeah.
I do a lot of writing on Substack. As you mentioned, if you just search Scott Britton on Substack, you'll find me. I also do some podcasting and YouTube. And if you want to contact me directly, you could probably find me on Twitter. I think I have my message thing open where you can just send me a message. That's a good place to reach me. That's where you reached me, Cleona. And parting words, I think like the reality is like, I believe everybody is kind of perfectly positioned exactly where they're supposed to be. And so if this resonated, awesome. If it didn't, that's awesome too. You know, like you are where you're supposed to be. And if this type of material is helpful, I'm happy to hear it. And if not, that's cool too. And, you know, we're all on our own journeys. And so, I'm just happy to be afforded the opportunity to share mine. And, you know, I'm wishing everybody nothing but well-being and prosperity on their own.
Brilliant. Thank you, Scott. You shared so many inspiring things, and I'm taking away so much from our interview, and I'm sure my little audience of whoever watches this will, you know, take away lots of wise nuggets, or not, as the case may be. I really appreciate you giving me your time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.